This is John Jackson Miller, writer of Star Wars comics and novels, and you're listening to Star Wars with Stevie B. May the Force be with you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome. Today I have Mr. Robert L. Webb with me here on the show. And this gentleman has been writing since he was 16. Some of his book material is Atalanta, Golden Steel, and Inferior. And he's currently working on a comic book series called Babylon Rocker, which we'll touch on all that. But he does something very unique. He does this series called Star Wars, Should This Be Canon? And he kind of dives into the lore and the backstory and kind of picks what Disney should have done, in a sense, is maybe not got rid of the expanded universe, but grabbed the good stuff out of it, incorporated it, and carried it on. And that would have been perfect. So we're going to dig into that today. But how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, and you've certainly described me more generously than I've ever described myself. So thank you for that.
You know what? I want to give a shout out real quick to Granny the Toad Lord, a fellow listener of both of us. The person put me in touch with you, and I came across your material, and like you said, you're really great. Like you have a lot of material out there, and I mean, you don't just dabble with Star Wars. You have Warhammer 40K, Lord of the Rings. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings, and then you have a great voice. It's unique, and what you do, from what I've been listening, is great. It's your opinions, how you describe things, how you dissect things in your thoughts. It's really good. It's really good, my friend.
I'm glad you think my voice is good, because when I listen to it in recordings, I always sound way high pitched and nasally, and I hate it. But then again, it seems everybody hates the sound of their own voice.
I was just gonna say, I think I sound terrible sometimes, but but no, for real, you do great. Your voice is very good. You recently had some throat irritation going on, from my understanding.
That was about a month ago.
Yeah, everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that can be a real pain when that happens. I've had some friends where they've lost their voice for a while, and it's terrible. But anyway, so basically, what I want to get started with here, Mr. Webb, is let's get a little backstory on, like, you've been writing since you were 16. So because that's in my opinion, it's a talent and a gift.
Well, I only wish that I could make a living by my writing. And as I believe you already know, we both have to hold down 9 to 5s. So we can't spend as much time as we would like doing the stuff we actually enjoy. Right. And part of the reason, and actually, in fact, full disclosure, the primary reason that I started my YouTube channel was just a way to advertise myself, because I always, if you've seen any of my videos, you notice I almost always put ads for my books at the beginning of each video.
Yes. Very clever.
I kind of admit I probably wouldn't be doing this if I'd been able to actually become successful at what I was doing. But I've grown to kind of being a content creator on YouTube. I probably still spend more time writing given the choice, but this is all right.
Yeah. So when do you prefer to write? Like, is there a certain time that you prefer the best?
It's basically more like I said, I do a 9 to 5,
right?
And then recording and putting together videos takes up time, especially if I want to, because I try to be fairly regular in my releases. Up until recently, I was doing one video a week, but then due to certain factors, I changed it to doing releasing a couple of videos sequentially every month. Just March, I ended up doing a total of 16 videos just covering the Knights of the Old Republic comic by John Jackson Miller, whom you've interviewed apparently.
Yes, sir. Yes, I was gonna touch into that. KOTOR.
So I'm actually kind of surprised that you'd reach out to a relative nobody like me when you've had people who've actually contributed to Star Wars on your channel. So I'm kind of confused more than anything.
Well, I appreciate that, but realistically, if I interviewed Hayden Christensen or Ewan McGregor, and I interview, I'm going to treat you all the same. You have a talent. they have everybody I've interviewed or talked to so far has a talent in a niche, and they bring certain aspects to it, and they've added so much to Star Wars to me.
And almost none of them currently work for Lucasfilm.
Oh well, you're right. Well, John Jackson Miller still dabbles a little bit.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, I believe it with them.
Did he ever go into the Knight Errant series? Because I believe that he ended up having to end that series a little prematurely because it was like right before Lucasfilm changed ownership.
Yeah, he it's
I
funny.
actually really liked. I think like KOTOR is really great. I just I think it is objectively better, but personal preference. I do love the Knight Errant series more. And I really do wish he'd been able to continue that.
Yeah, I really enjoy that as well. I've read the books. I just started reading the other day. I just started reading the comic series now that I have the Epic collection, because that was just released. So I just started reading the comic because I like Kara Holt. I like the character. I like the idea. You know, a lot of people, from my understanding, is they just didn't feel she had a good characterisms, I guess, in a sense. But I think the story is fantastic. I like her. I like the idea of her. And I was going to say, I listened to your review on that, and you like Knight Errant as well, but you have your little picks about it.
Nothing's perfect.
No, nor will it ever be, right? But yeah, I love Knight Errant. I like Kenobi. But yeah, back to your point, you all bring something, and you're doing a great job with what you're doing, and it should be known out in the expanding universe world, because there's a big fandom of that, as you know, right? And what you're doing is good, and the way how you break everything down, the little information you give on the authors or the artists, depending if you're on a comic book run, them are things that I didn't know some of that too. So that's great.
Well,
So
I mean, sorry.
No, it's just the time and effort that you put in. Like you said, you wish you could be doing this for a living, as I wish I could be talking to you folks for a living too.
Well, I figured most like the information, like the authorial or creator information, most of it I just get off of Wikipedia. That's still mostly reliable. Sometimes you do have to, and there are like links to interviews that the various people who create these stories have done, so which reveals even more production details. I was just fortunate in that there was a lot of information with regards to the creation, in particular, of certain things like Dark Empire or Knights of the Old Republic, because those are big names,
staples.
Of course, there's information on them is easier to come by.
Right. Yes, them are very, very well received by the fandom. Mm-hmm. But my point being is, you put time and effort in, okay, and it's just out of a joy that you have, and you need to be brought to attention, because Knights of the Old Republic. That's it. Like I recently just put an announcement out. Like you realize how big it is with the game, the comic books. Like there's a lot to go through.
Part of the reason I started doing them is because I wanted to at least get a feel of the original games before the remake came out. And it's supposed to be this year, but I haven't heard anything lately. Yeah. Do you know something I don't?
Not that I follow. I'm not a big gamer much anymore, as I have two teenage boys that require a lot of attention during the week with school activities and such. Yeah, thank you. But I've heard that it's supposed to be coming out, and then it was pushed back. You know how that is, back and forth until everything's set in stone. So what made you decide to go down the Star Wars path of digging into the lore? Like, you've been a fan, obviously, of Star Wars.
Yep. It was it was when the special editions came out. My father took my brothers and I to the theater. And even if it was like the original special edition with that god awful CGI Jabba, I was blown away. I imagine that's how a lot of people saw it when the films came out the first time in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
So Star Wars has been a part of, like most people, Star Wars has been like a part of their at least of their childhood growing up, because it is that Star Wars is just omnipresent. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, you're nailing it. Yeah, exactly.
So when I decided that I was going to do YouTube videos to promote myself and my books, I sort of didn't know exactly what I was going to do at first. Originally, I was leaning into the lore angle because I follow people who do various kinds of lore videos, and I thought I would try that. And then when I got around to the comic Dawn of the Jedi, which was I think Jan Surima did the art. I don't know if John Ostrander wrote it because those were the people that wrote Legacy. And Jan Surima's art style is kind of distinctive. And I did that first, and I thought, hold up. And it's like this, and of course, by the time I would start, this was like 3 years ago. So this is after the announcement of the creation of everything into Legends. I'd always kind of resented that, but I was like willing to give the sequels a chance, and it's because there was one reason that people always gave for why it was a good thing that to create a new canon that I actually did agree with. I didn't agree with any other reason, but this was the one thing that I felt was somewhat valid. It was that, especially when they tried progressing the timeline after the Return of the Jedi, it seems like Lucasfilm just could not, or at least not without great difficulty, tell any stories that took place after the original trilogy that was not tied at the hip to the characters of the original trilogy. And like even with Legacy, where after they're all dead, the main character is a descendant of Luke Skywalker. They just could not tear themselves completely away from the Skywalker legacy. And as we saw with the sequels, Disney couldn't do it either, or was unwilling to. So like I said, I'd always resented the idea that they felt that they had to decanonize the expanded universe to make way for the sequels. And then I decided, well, what if but there are some good things in things that come out of Disney Star Wars. They're very few, in my opinion, unfortunately. And like at this point, I mean, even The Mandalorian's not doing so hot lately. Like with season 3 is not being that well received. But the point is, I figured, if there is some good stuff in Disney Star Wars, is there any chance that I could like integrate it into the expanded universe, if only for myself? Because like I don't claim to be an authority. I'm just a guy with opinions.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how Should This Be Canon was born. And because I started, because I also wanted to like justify that there was stuff in the expanded universe that was worth keeping, but there was also stuff that I found that wasn't all that good. Like Dark Empire is one of the more famous Star Wars comics. It was the first one that Dark Horse did. It's got great art. Cam Kennedy is excellent, but the story was just so compressed and rushed. Like the whole part, or the whole first part, which is like I think just 4 issues long, or like between 4 and 6. You have Luke fall to the dark side, then almost immediately come back out again. And of course, there was the hilarious in hindsight bit where Rise of Skywalker ripped off the idea of Palpatine coming back. I don't recall. Did they use the clone thing for that
in Dark Empire?
In Rise of Skywalker?
Yes.
Yeah.
From Dark. Yeah.
The only part that was even more hilarious in retrospect was that they also retconned this very relatively obscure young. I don't know if they did this deliberately, but they ended up retconning this very obscure young adult book series called The Jedi Prince. And basically, the big revelation at the end is that this character, who's very significant, I don't recall the name, it also is a grandchild of Palpatine. That's the big revelation.
Okay, I didn't read that series.
I actually started laughing when I read just the synopsis for Rise of Skywalker and realized they'd done that. And it was like, my God, it's just like when Zack Snyder made Batman v Superman, where he made Doomsday be a combination of Lex Luthor and Superman's DNA. And I thought, oh, that's just Nuclear Man from Superman 4. Like I said, the Jedi Prince series is real obscure. I don't know if it was deliberate on their part, but it is kind of hilarious that they would do this. And the Jedi Prince is god awful. It's one of the reasons why it's so obscure, why very few people have heard about it, because it is terrible. Well, I read it like when I was in middle school, and even then I thought this writing is really bad. So again, I thought like, well, like Zack Snyder remade elements of the worst Superman movie. Then Disney decided to basically reuse elements of one of the worst Star Wars storylines. So how about that?
Yeah, that was
Sorry, that was kind of rambling.
No, I appreciate it. Like you said, your opinions and your thoughts, and the way you look at things, and it's great. And there was, you unpacked it a lot there. We'll say,
I always figured that if I ever did like a stream, my very first one would be just me roasting the Jedi Prince series, because it's just so dumb. It's not even worth doing a should this be canon, but it would be worth it just to make fun of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've never read that. I've heard that series, I believe, is kind of hard to come by.
Oh yeah.
Like
it didn't sell very well, obviously. So yeah, it is hard to find.
But
not that you would want to, but unless you enjoy a good Schadenfreude.
Yeah, and that's a young adult novel, right? Or book series, yeah.
Yeah, like some really thin books.
Okay. Yeah, see, some of them, well, actually, even some of the good, like the Jedi Apprentice series or Jedi Quest, I mean, them were done really good, in my opinion, and they're hard to get too. It's just crazy. My point is crazy of what prices some books could be, even if they're good or bad. We'll see.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. There's no trying to understand it, really.
So you kicked off, you wanted to dig into it after 2014. Now, did you read a lot of the, Star Wars lore, legends, expanded universe?
I was
leading up, growing up.
I wasn't much of a comic or gamer guy, really. And so for me, expanded universe was just all about the books.
Yeah.
Of course, Zahn's original Thrawn trilogy remains my favorite. I mean, some of the new Thrawn books are pretty good. My only gripe, because, it's Timothy Zahn. He's still the best writer for this franchise. My only gripe, I think, is that in some of the new books, he does, for very brief moments, admittedly, give the story from Thrawn's point of view. And I always felt that kind of breaks the mystique a little.
Okay.
Kind of what made Thrawn so fascinating and so appealing was that you never saw things from his point of view. You were never in his head. That was the whole point of Captain Pelion. He was basically the Watson to Thrawn's Sherlock, and we mostly saw Thrawn through his eyes, and that just made him all the more impressive. And so that when he did, pulled something out of the air just by looking at art, and then defeated the enemy that easily, Pelion was amazed, and so the reader was amazed. And that was I think a brilliant narrative device by Zahn. And like it doesn't ruin the new Thrawn books that he broke this a little, that he does give like brief POV bits with Thrawn. They're very short, but I feel it does kind of weaken the appeal, because the thing about Thrawn is he is so brilliant. He is clearly not a good guy, but he has so many admirable qualities as well.
Yeah, he's like a good bad guy.
Yeah, he was like a bad guy that you wanted to root for, even. Right. Even if in many ways it wasn't that he was sympathetic. He didn't feel like he deserved to win on a moral level, but he was just so good at what he did. So Zahn was able to make you want to root for the villain without wanting him to be without wanting him to win. Strangely enough, like that great callback, where in the Last Command, because like in the very first Thrawn book, the Heir to the Empire, there's that bit where Luke escapes him. He interrogates the guy in charge of the tractor beam. Why? How did he escape you? What were you doing? And then the guy tries to foist the blame onto his superior officer, saying that he wasn't trained properly, but that turns out not to be true. And then Thrawn has him executed. And then they do a callback to this in The Last Command, where Luke escapes again. Thrawn goes to the guy's replacement at the tractor beam. And the guy basically said, well, I tried this new unorthodox way of nailing him with the tractor beam, but it didn't work. And everybody thinks, oh God, Thrawn's going to kill him again. It's basically Darth Vader all over again. And instead, Thrawn promotes him, because he figures, you think outside the box. I like that. The Empire could use that. You're a lieutenant now.
Ching.
Yep. And like I think it was like Pelion stares at Thrawn as he walks off the bridge. The bridge is yours, Captain. And like Pelion and everyone is staring after him. And Pelion, and this great line where it says Pelion realized in that moment the old Empire was dead. The new Empire under Thrawn was born. And that is such a great moment. I mean, you can tell the old Thrawn trilogy is still my favorite.
Yeah, it's a lot of people's favorite. It's a great trilogy, you know, and it kicked everything off. And it's Thrawn for one. Thrawn's brilliant, like you said. He's a bad guy you want to root for. So now going back to is Timothy Zahn like your favorite author
Oh yes,
for
he's
this?
definitely number one
Okay.
in my book. There are like a few that come close. Like Drew Karpyshyn's Darth Bane series is brilliant.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yes.
Oh yeah. My again, my only complaint, and it's a really nitpicky one, is that I think that Path of Destruction should have been I think like no, not Path of Destruction, the second book. I think it was Dynasty of Evil. The middle book was kind of unnecessary. I think what he should have done was should have split Path of Destruction into two. The first one is where they focus on Bane's conflict, because when he discovers that actually, yes, he did use the Force to kill his father before he realized he was a Sith, and this causes a kind of weird moral quandary where like the remnant of his conscience is railing against him, and he temporarily loses his command of the dark side. I think that the Path of Destruction should have been focused on that, and should have concluded with him, just embracing the evil. And the second part should have been, and the second book should have been about the Battle of Ruusan and how Bane basically manipulates the Brotherhood of Darkness into destroying itself, so he can remake the Sith under the rule of two. Or, if Karpyshyn really felt that the Dynasty of Evil was necessary, just split Path of Destruction into two and make it a Darth Bane tetralogy. As far as I'm concerned, more Karpyshyn Star Wars is good Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. See, now right there, I'm going to just point this out. This is what you do. This is what you bring. Now, have you always had a niche to dissecting reading material? I mean, obviously you've been writing since you were 16, so you love to write.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a thing. But like, have you always had this niche as well of where you dissect?
Well, I think if it was a niche, I'd be far more successful on YouTube. But I've always been. But
You're pretty successful.
But I've always. Well, I don't know. Well, that define successful.
Well, if you're touching someone, okay. Well, maybe that came off kind of wrong. But if you're, you understand what I'm saying. If you're reaching someone, you've already scored. You're winning, right? Because for one, you're doing what you like to do, and you're getting it out there. You caught somebody that watches or listens to us, put us in a path. Now I'm on to your material. You see, you've looked at some. Do you see how it works? So we're winning. We're touching. You know what I'm saying? We're reaching out. We're connecting, and that's great. The next step would be achieving, what you're looking to, being able to, stay at home and write books for a living.
Yeah. Oh, well, you certainly have a more sunny outlook on things than I do, but then I seem to be a pessimist by nature, so don't mind me too much.
No, that's great. There's a place for all of us, right?
I will admit, I guess one of the more rewarding moments of this was when I decided that I was going to tackle the Jedi Knight game series, from my very first video game series for Star Wars. There was this YouTuber goes by the handle Mr. Poke, and he brought to my attention the Jedi Knight audiobooks. Basically, there were radio dramas, and they were focusing on Kyle Katarn, and like at least two of them were Soldier for the Empire was kind of like basically if Dark Forces, the very first game, had actually had a story beyond and wasn't just a very thin excuse for a bunch of Doom-inspired action set pieces. Because the Dark Forces was basically originally based off of the Doom engine. Well, they took the Doom engine, modified it to their own thing, and built Dark Forces around that. And the other two were sort of an expanded storyline of Jedi Knight, right? And that was fun. Including those as well. I wouldn't have included them if they hadn't been brought to my attention. So I guess it was very nice that someone liked my content enough that they would say, "Hey, you try this." That was nice.
Yeah.
Because like I said, most of my up till doing this channel, I didn't pay much attention to comics or games. My main focus was the books. Like see what other books have I done? Yeah, I did Death Star by Michael Perry, rest in peace.
Shadowhunter.
Michael Reeves and Steve Perry, rest in peace, Michael Reeves.
Yep.
Yeah, Shadowhunter, and again by Reeves. And Reeves really is undervalued. I feel he's not he doesn't have the same kind of brilliant style of say Zahn or Karpyshyn, but he was a good workhorse author. That's the term I use. He wasn't exceptional, but he made genuinely good stuff, and it's a shame that he doesn't have the same kind of recognition. Him, James Luceno, Steve Perry, they kind of fall into that category of author. I think, yeah, my very second should this be canon was Truce at Bakura, which is another pretty great book. Even though I've always thought the concept of entrenchment, that the Siru basically strap you to a medieval rack,
and
then suck the life out of you and to turn you so that and your soul becomes a battery. It's like I think I said somewhere in that video, like, guys, just introduce to the Siru the concept of a power converter. Take them down to Toshi Station, they'll be set.
It's funny. That's a good book.
So they did make pretty good villains, and certainly their design is not very creative. It's just a velociraptor with tongues in their noses, but the fact that they went for a very non-humanoid alien antagonist is
right after.
Good.
No, it's a good story. It's great. It's,
and I was kind of disappointed that even though, Jedi Academy, the video game, which I have done, and they had so many Easter eggs and fan service, and yet Bakura is one of the worlds that you go to, I think midway through the game, but there's no reference whatsoever to Truce at Bakura. So I felt that was kind of a disappointing missed opportunity. I mean, they dropped so many Easter eggs on almost all the other worlds that you go to that had been in previous Star Wars storylines. So
let me ask you this. I don't mean to jump off of the Truce at Bakura in the reference in the game. But you mentioned, Michael Reeves, rest in peace. Greg Bear, we lost. There's authors, Dave Overton. What's your thoughts behind? We'll jump back to 2014. What's your opinion on how come these authors haven't been with the new Disney? What do you have a thought on that?
What you mean? Why did Disney not bring so many of them along with?
Yes.
Obviously I'm not privy to the inner workings of the House of Mouse, so
right.
So obviously I can only speculate, and I have very little.
No, I know. I'm just curious your thoughts.
My personal opinion is that since they were planning to create a whole new canon and put the expanded universe into the Legends thing, I think they did feel like we want to start over.
Fresh.
Yeah. So even though they decided to bring a few on, they brought along Timothy Zahn, obviously, because that's why the new Thrawn books exist.
Yep.
But I guess they felt that apart from the biggest names like Zahn, they felt they didn't need to bring along anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering because it's just a shame.
But again, this is just speculation. But lately, as I've been looking into some of the material, particularly in the late 90s, early 2000s that came out around that time, I've started to get this niggling suspicion that there was, in fact, already a plan in the works to decanonize at least large chunks of the expanded universe before Disney, and that it just that the buyout was just a convenient reason to go tabula rasa. But I have no evidence at this point, so I'm not going to elaborate any further. At this point, that's firmly in the tinfoil hat category.
No, appreciate it. I'm just curious, because it's a shame that we're losing all these authors and there's stories to be told. And, they were great. Michael Reeves, Steve Perry, they're all, you know what I'm saying? They needed. It's just a shame. And now, other authors are coming out. We're finding about all this other material that's out there.
You saw how the name escapes me at the moment, but you saw how they treated the man who wrote Splinter of the Mind's Eye. They wouldn't give him royalties.
Yeah, there's a lot of that happened.
They were selling his books with the Legends logo slapped on. That was genuinely disgraceful.
Yeah.
And Splinter of the Mind's Eye, that's the very first Star Wars book ever written.
Yeah.
Apart from the novelization of the original films.
Right.
So at the Alan Dean Foster, that's his name, and I think the guy's like sick, and yet again they won't let him have royalties. even though he played such an integral role in the very beginnings of Star Wars, because if the original film hadn't taken off, that would have been the sequel. Splinter of the Mind's Eye would have been the sequel.
Yeah, great points. Now, do you prefer to get your media through Star Wars, through the books, or I mean, do you like to watch? I mean, obviously you watch the films. Like, I mean, do you watch them regularly, or do you have your favorite?
Oh well, if I were to rank, like, obviously I think the original trilogy are still the best films. I'm not a prequel hater, but I do feel the prequels, particularly because of unfortunately the poorly written dialogue and a lot of the acting, it does take it down below the original trilogy. Even though if you were to read like the concept of the prequel trilogy, the plot on paper, you would think this is great. It's almost like it's almost Shakespearean in the downfall of Anakin Skywalker. But alas, execution can hamper even the best of storylines.
Yeah.
But yeah, so favorite. Yeah, I don't think it's all that original for what I'm about to say. The first film is my personal favorite because I have a very soft spot for it. But if I were to rank them, it would be Empire, Jedi, then the first film.
Oh, really?
Because even if Return of the Jedi does have a bit of a pacing issue in the middle, and I do understand the complaints about the Ewoks, even though I don't agree with them. But I do think they are correct when they say that it would have been cooler if it had been Kashyyyk and Wookiees. I do think that would have been much better. But I do think the Ewoks get a bad rap. But even so, just the climax of Return of the Jedi makes the film by itself. It's like you have three climactic battles happening at the same time.
Yeah, right.
And then, of course, you have the internal drama as they pay off the relationship between Luke and Vader. I mean, it really is, even if Return of the Jedi isn't a perfect Star Wars film, the ending is a perfect ending, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So you have a soft spot for A New Hope.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it's weird because, that's all because George Lucas wanted to do a Flash Gordon film and they wouldn't let him. So he said, fine, I'll make my own space adventure film with Sabacc and Twi'lek dancing girls. Sorry, that doesn't roll off quite as smoothly as blackjack and hookers.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, New Hope is I was going to say probably mine, but I like Return of the Jedi. It's hard. It's a hard and the prequels, everybody, the bad dialogue and the clunky,
I hate
quirky,
sand.
Yeah, I mean, but it's that generation though. Them were all new things to be doing, and you got to think too, Anakin, you being a teenager trying to date, you know what I'm saying? You got to remember that. So I mean,
I do think Hayden Christensen can act well. It's just that he wasn't given good direction. I mean, everybody points to especially in Revenge of the Sith, great moments like this, the scene where he and Padme are in different buildings staring out over the Coruscant cityscape, as they both sense they're at a turning point, but they're afraid of what's going to happen. And Christensen can act well. I do think that he was unfairly ragged. I think that for his performance in the prequels. And the same thing, I think people were saying death threats to Ahmed Best because he played Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
People ruined Star Wars for Jake Lloyd just because he played Kid Anakin in The Phantom Menace. What was it? The kid who played Joffrey, though that was the reverse because he was too good at playing this unlikable little shit.
Yeah, you bought that.
Because they couldn't see him as anything else. There is truth to the saying that fans can be very unpleasant people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yes. I don't entirely buy into a lot of the modern journalistic idea that hyper fans by default are not to be relied upon for a good assessment. But there is always a dark side to everything, and there is that.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's passion for what they're into. You know what I'm saying? It brought me to doing what I'm doing now, meeting people, having fun. But I always try to be positive, because why not? we're only really here for a short period of time when we really think about it. Okay, time goes by, right? So why don't you try to enjoy what we all have, and you know what I'm saying? But I understand, nitpicking and doing things and tearing them apart and dissecting them, but you can still do it in a positive way.
Yeah,
If that
at the
makes
very
sense.
least, don't do it. At least don't send people death threats. All
Yeah,
right? That's just beyond the pale.
I'm watching Celebration recently here and there, and I watched the Kenobi panel and then Hayden Christensen. Like I got my eyes watered just to hear the response that Hayden Christensen's gets now, from the fans. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
Ahmed Best, I mean, he was just Kelleran Beck in The Mandalorian, which was great. He nailed that part. Oh my goodness sakes, the way his Jedi skills were on point. We'll just say that.
I've only seen like a little of the latest season of The Mandalorian, so I can't really comment there.
Okay.
I
I'm
haven't
sorry.
seen the Kenobi series either.
Okay, I was gonna get into that. But yeah, it's just try to be positive, and that's just the best way to be.
Yeah.
But now I trailed off. See what happens? Now you got me trailing off, Mr. Webb. This is what happens now.
My apologies.
So, I want to touch back because you mentioned the Kenobi series now, and I want to get into the Disney side of things because you said you gave him a shot, and you're just there's not much material. There's that space between the sequel trilogy, right? And
well, I mean, I at one point, I think this year I am going to try and do the Alphabet Squadron book trilogy because I've heard good things about that. So we'll see. And it is going to be important, especially when I get to anything that regards to Dathomir, because even during the Clone Wars, there are some serious divergences. It is like the fact that technically Dathomir wasn't supposed to be rediscovered until after Return of the Jedi, and the fact that apparently in the Clone Wars version there are no light side force witches. And of course, the big disappointment for me is just the fact that they didn't ride Rancors. That's I admit that's a pure nitpick, and that's purely down to that fact that the Rancor is my favorite monster in Star Wars ever since Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
and just the idea that you could ride one. That is just so cool. And I do feel like I was like, why Filoni? Can you just imagine like Asajj Ventress riding a Rancor into battle, lightsabers akimbo? That is just 50 different flavors of awesome in one image. Why?
You just hit me with, man, I want to see somebody draw that or some concept art or something along that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
You mentioned Filoni, Dave. In the animated series, do you keep up with the animated series, like the Bad Batch you watch? Do you try to?
Not terribly. I mostly, like I said, most of my Star Wars bread and butter remains books.
Okay,
I have been getting into comics, but that's more for the show than anything.
Yeah.
I sometimes follow the TV shows, and I did follow the Clone Wars for a bit when it first came on television, and there's a very small group of people who hate the Clone Wars, and they're mostly in the prequel hater camp, and like the vast majority of people really love it. But I'm kind of in the middle, but slightly leaning toward the positive. There's a lot of good stuff, and some of it is the best in the entire franchise. Like the ending of the final season that they finally got made. That is brilliant. The scene between Darth Maul and Ahsoka is just money right there. Sam Witwer is brilliant, and the best part, of course, is like when he's talking about Sidious. You see the animation; his eyes are darting around as if he's expecting Palpatine to just leap out of the shadows right then and there, showing that just how terrified he is of the man. And of course, that poignant moment where Ahsoka asserts her faith in Anakin, that Maul is wrong; he would never fall to the dark side. And you realize, but that's what is going to happen. Because, of course, Anakin never told her about his past. He didn't, even though he was closer to her than anyone else except Obi-Wan and Padme, he never let her in on that. He didn't let Kenobi in on that either. And so, of course, Palpatine knew, and that's how he was able to manipulate him. He knew the right buttons to push. But at the same time, there are bits of the Clone Wars that I take issue with. The biggest one for me is, what was it called? Where they're on the planet with the weird Force demigods, the son, the daughter, and the father. It's like only 3 episodes and like midway through the series, and it's weird. And it's basically like the inverse of the midichlorians thing. It's like the midichlorians is like Lucas wanted to over-explain where the Force comes from, and so he went like way too scientific that it's basically these microbes. Now, it doesn't contradict the idea that life creates the Force, that it's the energy field generated by all living things, but he just over-explained it. And then, of course, people took umbrage with the idea that, higher midichlorian counts means you're more likely to be a Jedi. And so that kind of made it almost like into a bloodline thing that people took umbrage with. In this particular little series of episodes, I think it's 3 of them, they go sort of in the opposite direction. And basically, it's like the balance of the Force is maintained by this weirdly dysfunctional demigod family. They're almost like the Q from Star Trek. And I always felt like that's the same thing as the midichlorians, just in the other direction. You're making it too fantastically mystical, but you're also trying to over-explain how the Force works.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's the big ass pull in the final part of this arc, where Anakin gets a vision of his future, and then they have to wipe his mind because plot convenient amnesia. We can't have him actually know his fate. For that alone, I despise that particular storyline.
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched I started to rewatch it.
Like I said, I don't expect many people to know that.
Yeah.
Like, Tartakovsky did that so much better in the micro series. Everyone remembers the cave painting scene.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Of course, Anakin he doesn't connect the dots. He just sees the story in the vision of the story in his mind's eye. He doesn't connect that. So there's no need for plot convenient amnesia.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts on the Force? Now that you brought that up, what's your overall opinion of the Force?
I think I did just kind of explain. I think I did just kind of express as my opinion. That they should have just there's no need to go into detail as to its workings. That they should have just left it as Yoda and Ben described it in the original trilogy, because then you lead to all kinds of different interpretations of how the Force can function. And that's kind of where the Witches of Dathomir came into play. It was the idea that, well, what if we had people that interpreted the Force as literally magic? Because it basically is space magic. What if we had people that just went into that whole hog? And I think that was David Wolverton. He wrote The Courtship of Princess Leia. Yeah. That was the one where they first appeared.
Yep.
And from there, you get the Tenel Ka, who becomes a recurring character in the post Return of the Jedi continuity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just a lot of people have different, like you said, the higher midichlorian count, like that was always a thing, and Tartakovsky, I love that. I thought them were great. Like, do you prefer that over the TCW if you were to choose one or the other?
I don't think it's a preference thing, though. I would say that I would only say that I prefer Tartakovsky for the singular reason that I just love his style more.
Okay.
And that's because, you see this if you just watch the progression of his work from Dexter's Lab to Samurai Jack to the micro series to Primal. Tartakovsky's basically, he wants to convey as much as possible with as little dialogue as possible.
Yeah.
Acting and almost no talking. Primal is basically the apotheosis of his sensibilities as a storyteller.
So bam, yeah. Okay.
So basically, Primal is the show he wanted to make. You can tell. That's ultimately I want to do a story where there is no talking. Just expressions and action.
And that's powerful to achieve that.
Yeah. And the fact that he actually, he got to live his dream. Like I said, Primal is the kind of story he always wanted to make. And he's done it. Where can he go from there, I wonder? Because he's still got a couple of decades left in him. Where is he going to go after Primal is done?
A workhorse.
I've hit the goal. I have made my silent action series.
Well, what's your goal, Mr. Webb? What is your goal?
Oh, well, my goal is just in terms of what kind of story I'd like to tell.
Yeah.
That
would be the achievement goal.
Yeah.
Right?
because like obviously my professional goal is to be able to be a professional writer, but
Yeah.
like in terms of like what kind of writing I'd like to do, I honestly don't know. And I think it's
Well,
because I'm unable to focus entirely on my writing that I don't know exactly what kind of story I'd want to tell. I have like like Tartakovsky, like I said, he wanted to do a story where he can tell it entirely through actions and facial expression without dialogue. In terms of like what kind of style of story I'd like to tell, that I don't know.
well, let's talk about these since we're jumping on this subject here.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about Atlanta. This is one of yours. Maybe we can give
Atalanta, but don't worry,
Atalanta. Yep.
you're not the first person I've had to correct on that one. They seem to miss the second A a lot. But yeah, I felt like I wanted to do. I've always been a fan of ancient mythologies. Like when I was in middle school and in high school, both their school libraries had these book series that was about like ancient mythologies from around the world: Greek, Egyptian, Viking, Polynesian, African, Mesoamerican, Indian, etc. And I spent way too much time reading those when I should have been doing my homework.
Well,
One of the reasons one of the reasons I am where I am now, unfortunately. I did, even though I am, not to toot my own horn, I am a smart person, but I just was not a good student.
well, yeah. Well, that's so.
And I freely admit it's all my own fault. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say, oh, they didn't understand me. It's just like, no, I was spending way too much time on stuff that wasn't related to getting good grades.
Yeah, but it puts you in a position now. You see.
Mhm.
So let's move on to this one, Golden Steel. Another
Yeah.
one of yours here. First I want to say, do you come up with do you have anybody that works with you on the artist side of things?
The first and third covers were done by a friend of mine. This one I did do myself.
Okay.
I basically just printed out the white and the characters, and then what I did was I took some watercolor paints, mixed them in a bowl, and then I just tried to drip them onto the paper so that it looked like blood drops.
Yeah, it looks good. It grabs your attention. So what's a little insight on this one?
That one, after Atalanta, where I basically where I spent a lot of attention on the story and the character, I felt I wanted to just do a very simple, straightforward action story. And I've been a fan of historical fiction for a long time. I am still proud of Golden Steel because I think I did made a very good, fast-paced story. But I think by then I hadn't delved quite as much into Japanese history, and there are quite a few inaccuracies in there in the setting wise. He's like, obviously the story is fictional, but I wanted to, but if I had known if I had known what I know now, I would have done things done the backdrop differently.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
And so basically Golden Steel, the setting is more based out of what a samurai or ninja movie is rather than what feudal Japan actually was.
Okay. Sounds
Like I said, overall, I still am glad that I wrote it, and I'm not ashamed of it. But I do think there are things I would have done differently.
Okay. We all say that, right? If I could
Oh,
go back
yes.
in time
It's the
and tell
eternal
myself,
refrain.
yeah, right. What about here we got this one's pretty bold too. I like the cover on this one as well. Inferior.
Oh, well, I'm not gonna try and spoil my own work, but
Right.
basically, but here's the thing. What inspired me to write this one? It's a sci-fi dystopia. It basically starts with a guy in like a dystopian city, and he escapes into the wilderness. Yes, so he has freedom, and he finds like other survivors, and they try to live together. And basically, that's what the story is about: them trying to these people who've never known what freedom is now, what will they do with it?
Right. Yeah, that's good.
And like in the dystopian city, everyone is equal. Everyone is a number. Or they are interchangeable parts. There is no preference.
Okay.
But that's not how real society works. People are different by definition. Some are better at some things than others, and this is how the protagonist tries to come to terms with this. And the only thing I will say beyond that is what inspired me to write this was that I've been reading this book Anthem by Ayn Rand. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the name, the Atlas Shrugged lady.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I would say that Atlas Shrugged is really bloated. the philosophy is good, but the story itself is not so great. You want it's too long. You want her shorter works if you ever get into that. But at the same time that I was reading Anthem, because that kind of was the inspiration for the basic plot line of Inferior, someone escaping a dystopian society. And basically I figured, well, what comes after that? At the same time, though, I was also reading Friedrich Nietzsche, and I read specifically this fairly famous essay called The Tarantula from Thus Spake Zarathustra. It's about people who say they are for justice, but in reality, they are motivated by envy and resentment. And so that's basically what gave me the idea for Inferior. What if I took a Nietzschean tarantula and dropped it into essentially the Garden of Eden? People literally starting over, fresh start. What if I took the Nietzschean tarantula and introduced that into the garden instead of the serpent?
Wow. That's interesting. I was going to ask where you get certain inspiration from, because it's always interesting that where folks grab it and where they. So yeah, two different. You read a lot, then I take it. You read multiple books at a time.
I was not at a time, but I do I usually went through books very quickly, especially when I was younger and had more free time to do that.
Okay.
Like I was a big Harry Potter fan in the 90s, and every time a new book came out, I would read it and I would not put it down until I was finished, even if it meant reading through the entire night.
Oh,
yeah. I've always been a prolific reader. Like I actually read Moby Dick, the unabridged Moby Dick, when I was 7.
Wow.
And like, admittedly, like most of the book is pretty dry. It's basically just Melville describing in agonizing detail the life aboard a whaling ship. So like they really don't get to, like they only occasionally bring up Ahab and his vengeance against the white whale, and they only really focus on that at the very end. And so yeah, it's kind of a weird it's a weird book to read at the age of 7, but I did.
Yeah, you normally don't hear that. So yeah. And here we got your comic book that you're working on.
I'm almost ready to do the Kickstarter, because like there have been so many delays because I've been focusing on so many other things. I've got too many different things to do.
Too many.
But I'm hoping that I should soon get the Kickstarter going for at least the first chapter, because I hope this will be an ongoing series.
Good.
And the title, just like the title, I had just the other year, I had read, a couple of years ago, I read Neuromancer by William Gibson, one of the first cyberpunk books ever written. And when I was done, I felt my mind was fuzzy afterwards. Like I was I'd been so absorbed into that world that my brain was having trouble reconnecting back to reality. Like, I don't think I've ever had that experience with a book before. That's how sucked in I was. And the title comes from a scene later in the book where they're in this space station that's run by Rastafarians, essentially Rastafarians in space. And so they've got their own slang. And the station is called Zion. And so their language has a lot of biblical references. Zion, I think, is a reference to like something sacred, almost like a promised land kind of thing. And they refer to the earth as Babylon, referencing the whore of Babylon. Sort of, this is where sin resides. And at one scene where a spaceship is coming up from the Earth's gravity well to the station, one of the Zionites calls it Babylon Rocker, basically a ship coming up from Earth.
Yeah.
Earth. And that's basically where the title was. I just love the way that rolled off the tongue. That's a good ship name. And so Babylon Rocker is actually it's kind of also like a truck driver handle. Like you sometimes see this in it. It's like they give themselves these weird names on their radios. And so I thought, that's what I'll call the ship that the main characters fly in, Babylon Rocker.
That's a good name. I like that. You're right. It does roll off the tongue good, And yeah, it's funny that you said that about truckers' names, Rubber Ducky and all that,
Yep.
Papa Kilo.
There was an episode of Cowboy Bebop, the anime, an episode that focuses on that, and the main character's handle, indeed the name of the episode, is called Heavy Metal Queen.
It's cool. That's cool. It's great and interesting where everybody gets their information from and how it makes you spark that like I said, it's like a gift and a talent that you have, that you took parts from different books and it meant something to you in a certain way, we'll say. And, you know, you just combined it and bam. And you have, you know, I'll put all your stuff obviously in the description, because you have a website, you know, you're all Twitter, you're all over the place. You know, you're doing a good
I'm
job
trying to anyway.
with your handle. No, you really are. You're doing good, and it's interesting. And we're not done yet, because I mean, there's some more things I'd like to talk about with you regards to Star Wars. I just wanted, since we were talking about book work and such, I wanted to, you know, give you a chance to plug it and get it out there, because it's interesting, you know, and it's something to be proud of, sir. You know, you're doing your thing, and that's awesome. So,
Thank you.
you know, you weren't a fan of the sequel trilogy movies, we'll say, you know, because of how the story was. Now, you know that they're coming out with another trilogy, right? Like
Yep.
Yeah.
They're gonna try it again, and I'm thinking, yep, it's gonna be like watching a train crash in slow motion.
You know,
they don't. It's clear that, like a lot of people in Hollywood, Disney is just not learning the lessons of the past.
Yeah.
But if they can actually make it work, I'll be impressed. But my hopes are not high. If anything, they are infinitesimally small.
You know, I was thinking, I've been kind of kicking it around, because after a chat I had with Mr. Bidler and my friend Marcel, you know, his outlook on the story, you know, it's Rey's journey, and they're trying to do something different. You know, they took everything, made it Legends. They're not going to do that. But so far, they haven't really touched on any of the areas that was that material, if that makes sense. From what my understanding is, and from what I see so far, right? They're playing in the High Republic. They're doing stuff at this different time in this different era, but they haven't really touched on the heart of it.
Yep, I think that's because the sequel trilogy kind of became such a failure. I think, like Force Awakens was fairly well received. Like, there were the complaints that it's basically a retread of A New Hope, and they didn't like that the some of the old characters had been were being almost denigrated to make the new ones look better.
True.
But people, I think, were willing to be forgiving. But then when The Last Jedi came, that just was the tipping point. And I think because those films, like, they did fairly well financially, but critically not so much. And I think that's why they haven't really expanded on that too much. Honestly, though, the High Republic, that was the one that I was actually pulling for, because, you know, Star Wars, if you look at the continuity and the lore, it's like it's a 30,000 year long in universe history. There's so many different periods you can go to. And again, it would be nice if Lucasfilm could just finally, like, tear itself away from the Skywalker saga and tell more stories in different settings. But from what I've been looking again into the High Republic, but I've also heard bad things about it. Some of the writers are not very good. So who knows? So I'm very cautious, though I am going to try them.
Okay. Yeah, I've read a couple. This was
Again,
a while ago.
Like something like a High Republic, a different time period would be a good direction to go in for the franchise.
Oh, right. That's what I mean. Like, they haven't really touched on that material yet, even though some of the characters, you know, like I've only probably watched the sequel trilogy 3 times most each, you know, and after going through this journey so far and understanding what all transpired, I want to watch them again and be open-minded. You know, like you said, just take what you know, it's kind of like a buffet, we'll say. That's what was told to me once. And you just pick what you like. You know, there's so much fandom here. There's so much good material. And to try to keep continuity and the lore and everything, like, you know, you understand you're going through this with diving into the lore behind it all. There's a lot of it. Right? I mean, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
It's like Solo was the first film to, like, not do well in terms of box office, but I think that was I think it was that point people were just so burnt out on bad Star Wars movies, they just weren't looking forward to They just did not see it. It's not terrible, but my main issue with that movie is that it kind of contradicts Han's character arc. Where at the end of the film, he's more optimistic, whereas in the film, he's very cynical. And that's his starting point. He becomes more idealistic as the story goes on, and he finds loyalty to his friends, if not so much to the cause of the rebellion. But and I thought there were others that did it better. You want an origin story for Han Solo. A.C. Crispin did an excellent book trilogy on it. And I remember reading because they included introductions, and she talked about how much she enjoyed writing this, working with the people on Lucasfilm, making sure that what she was doing was in keeping with the continuity. And I thought, why is this she's dead too, unfortunately, another rest in peace. But we so took it for granted back then. We fans, this is sort of an indictment of us as fans. We so took it for granted back then, and when there were so many more people who cared about that kind of thing. And it's it in some ways, it really does give you a pearls before swine kind of feeling.
Yeah.
As for Rogue One, which is kind of most people say the only good film to come out of Disney, it was also good. But if you notice, if you looked at my channel, I did a canon conflict between it and the Crispin Solo trilogy. And the thing is, I would have liked to keep both, but the problem is both stories deliberately reference the Tantive 4 by name. So the ship can't be in two places at the same time. And so I had to make a choice there.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a lot of material that you've put years into this journey so far. Do you plan to keep going after the Knights of the Old Republic? Do you just
yes, I am going to, I think, focus more on other lore videos because I get more views that way. Okay. But I am going to try and keep going with the Star Wars stuff because I think that is worth discussing. It just doesn't seem to bring in as many views and subscribers, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I want to try to help. I mean, get you out there, pass it around because what you're doing is fun. It's exciting. You look at it from a different, unique point of view. The way you break everything down, it's crisp. In a sense, it's very crisp. There it is, and you're honest. You're an honest person, and that's I respect that. Yeah, everybody's, like you said, we were talking about before. Everybody's opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. I'd like to hear about it. It might change. I've looked at things differently now through talking with different folks. That's one of the bonuses of doing this for me. Excuse me. It's a blast. So yeah, hopefully we can get you some more Star Wars people out there to check you out because it's brilliant. And who came up with the little stick figure head?
Oh, that was entirely me.
I like that.
This whole thing is a solo act.
I like that. Well, I didn't know if you had a friend or somebody or.
Well, the main reason is that I am incredibly, intensely camera shy. I talk to my parents about this. Sometimes they keep insisting that I should put my own face in the videos. I just cannot do it. I try recording knowing that my actual face is in front of the camera. I just gibber and babble.
Well, that's all. Yeah, but that's where that's natural. You're being natural. You're in the state of flow. It doesn't have to be scripted.
Yeah, but I'm not nearly as coherent as I am now. The few times I tried recording with my own face, it's like when I tried to talk up my comic for the first time. I just look like I'm undergoing interrogation. I'm so pale and sweaty, and I'm just rambling.
Yeah,
not in any good way. It's literally just it's so incoherent. And so I decided, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm keeping my little avatar figure.
Yeah, well, it works. It looks good. I like it. It adds to it. It fits. It fits. It's you. So far on this journey, has anything really impacted you differently or looked at an outcome of a situation?
Not really. I do feel like I'm most of the same guy as I was when I started.
Okay. Well, and
who knows, if I become more successful, maybe I will start viewing things differently, but who knows?
Well, I just mean as in have you picked up on an author or an artist you like to the way art, in the comic books, the design? Is somebody like you changed your opinion on
Oh,
them?
oh, oh. I'm not entirely, I don't have a preference for comic art. Again, I only went into Star Wars comics fairly recently, but I think like if it like fits the story, then it works for me. That's my sole
That's true.
criteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mike Miller worked with some pretty good artists when he did the KOTOR comic, although he did have also work with some pretty bad ones because apparently the series was so long running they weren't able to keep the same guy in the artist chair, so they kind of rotated in people, and some are clearly better than others. That just seems to be the thing. It's like in like Legacy, where John Ostrander just had Surema working with him the entire time. That's like a rarity.
Excuse me. Yeah, there's so many things have happened through time. Like that's a whole other story to be told, with the artists and the timelines and people coming in and out. Like Tales of the Jedi. That was a review I listened because I like that comic book series.
Yep.
It's great.
That you can tell like when like Veitch, that was the story he wanted to tell, but at first Lucasfilm said no, so he had to do Dark Empire first. And then when that became successful, they decided, okay, we'll give you more free reign. And then he wrote Tales of the Jedi. Because you can tell a lot of the elements in Dark Empire are stuff that he does in Tales of the Jedi. The hero falling to the dark side, but ultimately redeemed, though he actually does it better with Ulic Qel-Droma because he had more time to go into that than he did with Luke Skywalker in the Dark Empire.
Okay. Yeah. I love both of them. And yeah, they're both, Tom, Mr. Veitch, I thought I'm not 100% total understanding of the story of what happened with the Dark Empire series. I know.
Well, I know with like with part 3, there was an argument between the artist Kim Kennedy and George Lucas, and that's why he left. They had to get in another guy to do the art for the third part of Dark Empire. But I don't know why Veitch was given like only like 3-4 issue comic runs to tell the story, because that's the biggest problem with Dark Empire and why I decided to not think of it as canon in my mind, because it's just way too rushed. Had Veitch more time, because he is a genuinely is he still alive?
No, he passed away.
Rest in peace again. He was a genuinely good comic book writer. I think that with time, given more time, he could have made Dark Empire truly brilliant. Because again, Tales of the Jedi shows when you give him the time to breathe and tell a story well, he can do it very well.
Okay. Yeah. I like both of them. I think are great.
Oh yeah.
But I want to touch on.
I mean, I don't think it's really Veitch's fault that Dark Empire failed in my eyes. It's just that he wasn't given sufficient room to tell the story.
Okay. You mentioned, Naomi Sunrider and
Naomi
Rey.
Sunrider, yes.
That was pretty interesting when I heard that, how it's similar stories, but you believe Sunrider did it better, or they did it better with Naomi Sunrider.
Well, no, I was comparing Luke to Ulic Qel-Droma. Yeah. I don't think there really is a parallel between a character in Dark Empire to Naomi Sunrider.
No, not Dark. No, I meant with Rey Skywalker from the sequel trilogy.
I don't know. I don't see how that's really comparable. Well, because like Naomi starts off as like she loses her husband,
right?
And then she's not a Jedi at the time, but she eventually undergoes training. And then there are like the one element of Tales of the Jedi that I think didn't work was that they didn't really develop the romance between Ulic and Naomi very well, so there's not much emotional pull there.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you meant
Naomi was pretty decent, because like apparently they were going to have her daughter be in the first video game, Vima Sunrider, but apparently there was a copyright dispute over the name, and that's where Bastila Shan came in.
Yeah, see, I thought I must misunderstood you, but I thought you were saying how the sequel trilogy yet took another story.
Oh yes, it took elements from Dark Empire.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But
specifically Rise of Skywalker took stuff from Dark Empire.
Yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah. Maybe just kind of a.
I guess the one thing that I would alter. Like if I were somehow at Lucasfilm and I had like any kind of creative authority, I would have probably opposed the slip into grimdark edginess in some of the later storylines, because I feel that that takes it a little too far away from the essence of Star Wars. Like it kind of started, I think, with the new Jedi Order series, particularly the Yuzhan Vong, because when I thought about it, I realized, wait a minute, the Yuzhan Vong are basically a Warhammer faction. Because basically, if you took the Warriors of Chaos, who are these religious fanatics who worship this pantheon of ghastly, unpleasant gods, and then you gave them the biotechnology and the bioaesthetic of the Tyranids, you'd get something like the Vong, right down to the spiky armor. And then like they went, and from there they just went darker and darker with the Swarm Wars, and then with Jason Solo falling to the dark side. But I think it wasn't the kind of darkness. It wasn't the Star Wars can be dark, but I think there are kinds of darkness that work and some that don't. Like Empire Strikes Back famously went darker, but it was darker in like the mythic, dramatic way.
Yeah.
A lot of the later, a lot of them early, like late 90s, early 2000s Star Wars storylines went dark in sort of into the edgelord way. And I feel it doesn't quite work. But again, I haven't read the new Jedi Order, so I will reserve final judgment.
Yeah, I have not read it. I've heard it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But like I said, I'm going to reserve judgment until I've actually read the thing.
So what are you reading for
19
Star Wars?
books. God, that's going to be tough.
Oh, I know it. Now, do you collect? Do you have all the books?
No, I'm not really. I'm not a collector. I'm just an avid reader.
Okay, so like a Kindle. Do you prefer a Kindle? The library?
For me, it's physical paper.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I can't read. I can't read digitally.
Yeah. And I do have audiobooks because luckily I'm at a job where I can put the headphones in while I work.
Perfect.
So I can listen to audiobooks, Star Wars and otherwise, while I'm working.
So what books are you reading right now? Let me ask you
now?
That. Yeah.
Well, I'm currently going through Michael Moorcock's Elric saga.
Okay.
In terms of Star Wars, like I said, I'm planning to do the Alphabet Squadron trilogy at some point, and definitely Darth Bane and Thrawn. I'm saving those for special occasions. But yeah, right now I'm mostly into the Elric saga, and I'm thinking like, man, it's kind of weird that only now Michael Moorcock is getting recognition in the States. Because apparently he's been a big name in Europe for a long time, but only like recently have people began picking up his work. And like he's one of the founding fathers of dark fantasy.
Okay.
I mean, without Elric, you don't have authors like Glenn Cook, the Black Sword Company, I think. And like so many people also kind of ripped off Michael Moorcock to make their things. Warhammer Fantasy ripped off basically the Melnibonéans to create the Dark Elves and the Dark Eldar. This ancient elder race that are incredibly sadistic and stuff and decadent. And of course, there's that whole controversy of The Witcher being essentially plagiarized from Elric. There are plenty of videos out covering that debate if you want. I'm not going to go into it here.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of videos of debates that we can talk about, right? Like you said, you like to just tell a story. You just that's your goal, is just to tell a story, a good story.
I'm actually going to be, I think like a few months, I'm actually going to do some lore on the Michael Moorcock multiverse. Because, that's something that very few people talk about. And I thought, well, maybe I can bring that to light.
Yeah.
Because it is worth doing. It's interesting. This brilliant concept that Moorcock had. What if all protagonists are the same guy? What if they are all just being incarnated over and over again to struggle and suffer and strive? That's the whole premise. Yes. Elric is just one incarnation of the Eternal Champion.
That's interesting.
There's even some stories where he does crossovers.
So you're a big fan of his as well?
Or
becoming a big fan?
I would say I am a fan. Yeah. I would still say that if I want to like fantasy that's about like the lone hero, Robert E. Howard and characters like Conan and Solomon Kane are still my number one, but Moorcock is definitely number two.
Nice. Good. Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you some fun stuff here. Since you're a writer and you come up with names and such, what would, if you could write yourself in Star Wars or you could be a part of Star Wars, what would your character name be? Just curious.
Oh.
I don't know how they would write that.
I've never thought of that before.
Interesting question, huh? It always stumps people.
Yeah.
You think you would be quick with it?
Yeah, but
Should we come back to that one?
You may have stumped me there.
There we go. We got a winner, folks. We got a winner. No. So, well, who's your favorite character overall?
In the
Movies,
Star Wars
books?
universe?
Yes.
Ooh. I think it would be sort of a three-way tie. And big shock, they're all Zahn characters between Thrawn, Mara Jade, and Talon Karrde.
Good.
I mean, like that. If you really want ultimate proof that Zahn is the best writer, the fact that his original characters, pop up more in the expanded universe timeline than anyone else's, that really is the ultimate proof in my view.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think I think one of the few other authors that managed it was Kevin Anderson, where he created Admiral Dala, and she actually became a recurring villain. That's actually unique. Most Star Wars villains, they don't last beyond their own storylines.
Right. That's what's great about you see these, as I'm learning, you see these characters pop up in books, and it's fun. It's a good time. Yeah. What kind of character would you be? Would you be a smuggler, a jet pilot, lieutenant?
I guess I would. I guess it would be not. I actually, because again, going back to the idea of interpreting the Force differently, I would actually create something. I would do something similar to what Wolverton did with the Force Witches of Dathomir. I would want to explore different ways that the Force is interpreted and utilized. So I would create a character around that.
Nice. I like that. I know. I like always hearing the different opinions and thoughts and ideas behind the Force. It's intriguing to me, because everybody's got a little different look on it. So that's good. I've never heard that one before. That's a good choice. Good choice. What's your favorite book in this? I mean,
oh man, individual book. Obviously, if it were like a series, it would be the Thrawn trilogy,
right?
But
right.
The
That's
best individual book.
Hard one.
I think it would be Last Command, narrowly edging out Dark Force Rising. I mean, Last Command has a great cliffhanger ending where they realize, oh God, Thrawn's found cloning cylinders. He's now stolen the Katana fleet. He can now populate them in mere months. That's a great cliffhanger ending, as well as how they developed the Nogri and Borsk Phalia, another recurring Zahn character.
Okay.
I think again, because the way you end a story matters, and The Last Command is a great ending.
Well, it's a great trilogy.
Oh yeah, just the moment, the deaths of Sabaoth and Thrawn, how Mara does it just I have seen you in my vision, Mara Jade. You will kneel at my feet, and she does, and then she stabs him with the lightsaber, because crazy old coot that he is. Sabaoth just thinks, oh, she will be my servant, but actually she'll be your death. And then, of course, Thrawn's death. It was so artistically done. His last words, as he realizes that Rook, the Nogri bodyguard, could have killed him at any time, but he wanted to wait for the exact moment when Thrawn realized the Nogri had betrayed him. Even in death, even as he's dying, he realizes, you have style, my friend. I appreciate that. That is just such a great villain death. If possible, you should get the audio book of The Last Command, because all three of the Thrawn trilogy audiobooks have they come up with sound effects, the Star Wars sound effects, and the John Williams score, and the score that plays over Thrawn's death is the exact same score that plays when Vader has just died. That very sad harp string moment, the dark, sad harp moment.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I can't do audiobooks. I've tried. I just can't.
That's a
But like,
shame because Mark Thompson is the narrator for the Thrawn trilogy, and he is great.
he's
And like
good.
Sam Witwer narrates a Shadowhunter, so
Yeah,
he gets
I've
to
heard
play
that.
Darth Maul again.
Yeah. I also heard Dooku Jedi Lost is a very good audio. Like they did a whole thing
Mm.
with that. It's very good. I read the book. It's like a script. It was good. Yeah. Is there, on that note, is there any, we'll give you a chance here before we wrap things up. Mr. Webb, is there any plugs or any last thoughts or anything you want to get out there?
Nothing except please buy my books. I'm sure you'll like them. Sorry, I'm just I'm just a poor struggling artist. Pity me.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that sort
you
of
have a
thing.
talent. You really do. And I hope people, I'll put links in the description, but I hope people go check your channel out, listen to some of your, some of your lore series. Even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you got Lord of the Rings, you got Warhammer on there.
Mm.
It's great. You do a good job and you put effort in.
Apparently in terms of view counts and comments, my most successful videos are ones on Dune and this thing called Legend of the Five Rings, which was based around a card game. Never was not expecting that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, there's fans out there of that. I've heard of Legend of the Five Rings. I used to be a Magic the Gathering player,
Mm.
so but yeah, you just need to be, your work needs to be put out there, sir. You put time and effort in and energy and focus, and you really make it sound good, look good, give good detail. I just want to express that a lot because it's true. And that helps when you're listening, to guys like me, like you said, at work. That's when I listen to podcasts, when I'm at my regular job or if I'm doing house chores, I just got it on. And the way you come off it's good and it's clear and you got a good sounding voice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you do because I sure don't.
Well, I appreciate your time. Like I said, it's been fun. It was a pleasure to meet you. I want to say thanks to everyone for watching and supporting. Please like, subscribe, share, check out Mr. Webb stuff, share his stuff. It's great. It's Star Wars. It's what we're here for. It's what we're talking about. It's what we love, what we're passionate about. So there you have it, Mr. Robert Webb, Brainstorm Lore. I hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, see you guys soon.